But I'd love to hear about some of the stuff that you do have up on the wall, some of the
Would love to talk
local
about
history.
that.
Yeah, I would love to hear all about that.
Where do you want to start?
Wherever you want to start.
Okay, this we brought from the other store. This is a big poster board of an event we did where we had participated in the reissue at the let's see, 60-year anniversary of this Josh White at Midnight album, and we worked with Dolph Ramser, who was the manager of the Avett Brothers, who was a Josh White fanatic and grew up and listens and still very. And he got Elektra Records to let him reissue this. We had a big event, and the mayor, through our request, declared it Josh White Day in Greenville, South Carolina. We got the certificate and did the whole thing. And Josh White's son, Josh has been deceased since I think the late 60s, but his son, Josh White Jr., came down and performed. In fact, that's a picture of Josh White and the guy that, as an elder gentleman, came down and played here and was participating in the event. So there'll be a whole display there of his records and things. And that was a really cool thing that we did. Here is coming soon. It's the Mac Arnold Blues Journey. Mac is a legendary bluesman that lives south of town out in Lawrence County, who played with John Lee Hooker. He played with Muddy Waters. He toured with the Temptations. He's the bass line in the Sanford and Sons theme, that poppin' bass. That's him.
Wow.
And he recorded the records with Tyrone Davis, and he's got his own blues band, Played Full of Blues, and sort of came out of retirement and got active in making music again as a bluesman. And he played with Johnny Hooker, and he's the most amazing, sweetest soul you could ever want to meet. And we're going to make a life-size Mac Arnold right here, and then do a history. He was involved in, Otis Redding. That's Otis Redding's last concert gig. It's a mock-up just that we put on the wall. Saturday, December 9th, 1967. Otis played that show at Leo's Casino in Cleveland, got in his new Beechcraft airplane, and the plane went down and he died. And Mac was on the gig that night. I don't know if he sat in, and we're going to talk to him and get the details, but that was a little amazing piece of trivia from the Mac Arnold journey.
Wow.
And now he's been a farmer. He grows greens and all sorts of amazing things. And anyway, that's that. That's the Mac Arnold. And then these are just some posters here from the old auditoriums in the area. Greenville Memorial Auditorium, which has been long torn down now. But I love these old rainbow color poster print style posters. And there's a gospel one from 1987. This next one to it, there was a festival in town called River Place Festival. They took it offline or killed it when the River Falls development came up and Artisphere began. But Horizon was involved in producing concerts for the festival for, I think, 4 or 5 years. And that's a poster from one of them. And there's a James Brown and the JBs and the Honeybees from Spartanburg Memorial Auditorium. And there's we're going to put up the display of singles up here just above these posters of both renowned as well as totally unknown but locally recorded or local based artists. There's one here, one of my favorites is Ann Sexton. And there's an old beater single. It's half broken, but it's good for display to hold the spot. And there'll be a lot, maybe be a dozen or 20 singles up here of all different varieties. This is a picture of Nappy Brown, legendary South Carolina bluesman. Now gone, sadly, but was quite a force of nature if you ever got to see him live. So we have that on display. And over here, we have some Horizon type memorabilia mixed in. This is some Michelle Malone poster. Michelle Malone is an artist that's a great Southern artist based out of Atlanta and had a lot of tie-ins with Athens activities. And we connected with her very early on when her first record was out, and that's a poster for her first record. She brought it by Horizon and consigned us her first album is called New Experience. It's still one of my favorite records out of the South from back in the day. It's framed randomly with a couple of things from an old club called Studio B, which had some great concerts. They were on South Pleasantburg Drive. You can still see the building. I don't know what it is now. It's something else. But here you can see Nappy Brown was playing, like we just talked about. Matt Guitar Murphy, the guitar player from the Blues Brothers and from Albert King and Notoriety. It was an amazing concert. And reggae band, and there was another reggae band. And there's me. I would spin records rather under the weather many times from the beverages. And I had a nickname, Dubmaster I. Gene, and that was one of the first iterations of the Dubmaster DJ activities. There's a piece of artwork by Jim Campbell, one of the really amazing artists in this area. He did covers for Marshall Tucker, and is just a great artist. And he did this Ronald Reagan thing when Ronald was basically pulling funding from the arts and trying to convince America that this was a wonderful idea. And the name of this piece of print or artwork is called What Did He Say? And anyway, you should make a close-up picture of that.
Oh, I definitely will.
Because we're still doing it.
Yep.
And there's our first flyer from when we
Very
now
curious.
open all our special opening special offer, all regular $5.54 prices, normal $6.98 list. Can you imagine that? Are now $4.88. And across the bottom it says, "See us for music you won't find anywhere else in this area." That is still somewhat true. We have a lot of stuff that folks don't have. An old Doc Watson poster when he played Roper Mountain before it was even Roper Mountain Science Center. I think it was, anyway, they called it Roper Mountain Park at that time, and that's 1981. Sponsored by the Jaycees and Greenville Sheriff's Department. How about that? Okay, this is a John Sturt's piece of artwork. It's his typical fantasy records, sort of science fiction meets record store stuff. And right there, it's unfinished because he always liked to draw things and then left them and went on to something else. But it says Vinyl Vision was the name of this one, I guess, or was at least the title across the bottom. I hope to get a local artist to ink that in. It's all penciled in quite clearly. It's Horizon Records up top.
Yeah, that's
Wonderful
a beautiful
image.
piece.
Yeah, and he did these others right over here. This is another one of his that we've actually, one day I noticed years and decades later, John sadly has been deceased now for a lot of years, but he did this one, which is another science fiction. It looks like some kind of heavy metal. It's got a tone arm for like a sword or what do you call it, a scepter or something.
So it was a tone arm at first.
And he's standing with this heavy metal hotness looking gal with him on a pile of records, and it says "An Adventure for Your Ears," Horizon Records. And I thought, I looked at that one day, I said, that's a hell of a slogan. We'll just do that. So it's on a lot of our t-shirts and stuff.
That is a great slogan.
And this is a watercolor right next to it. Again, a sort of a fantasy. This is sort of a woodsy fantasy. And when I looked close, it's called Hambo the Music Lover. And a little bear type guy with vines growing out of his head and a turntable on a mushroom stand. And the notes are coming off the turntables and spinning, and they have bat wings and they're flying up. And there you have it. That's Hambo, one of my favorites.
Yeah, I really like him.
So, and here's Uncle Walt's band. This is a recent piece, but it's signed by David Ball. He's the last of the three that were Uncle Walt's that's still with us. He's a brilliant country performer, double bass player, guitarist, singer, songwriter. And Uncle Waltz was one of the all-time favorite things ever for me to come out of the upstate Carolinas. They were a Spartanburg trio that went on to Nashville and then went to Austin where people understood them and had quite a bit of notoriety. Both Champ on the left, who died of cancer many years ago, and Walter, who unbelievably, tragically died in that airplane. Was it U.S. Air that went down in Florida many, many years ago? And they both worked with Lyle Lovett and a lot of people. And I mean, Lyle Lovett used to open for them in Austin, and he will tell you so. And I just love their music. And did a lot of work and knew them and put them on in concert. This picture is one of my favorites, and it's the least known thing probably in the entire building. This is a fella, it's an old photograph I got. I don't know where I got it, maybe from an estate or some other stuff that was given to me. But this is Thomas Brockman, who lived in Greenville and was a renowned classical pianist. He went to Curtis Institute, and if you don't know what that is, look it up. It's a big deal. It's like Juilliard in Philadelphia. You have to audition in. It is the upper level of conservatories in America. And he actually, in his day, he studied in France, studied with some very important people in France, came back, and I was reading a biography of Samuel Barber, the composer. And Thomas did one of the first, if not the premiere, of the Barber's piano sonata in New York, I think, or maybe in Philadelphia, New York. But that was kind of a big deal to classical people, and I'm going to put up a thing. He's long forgotten. I'm sure nobody knows of him except maybe some distant relative that might still be around here. I don't know. But I like him, and I think he deserves a shout, and there he is. This is a whole row of images of just completely randomness. And this top bin of these classical, this is a bunch of classical LPs. And the top bin is largely the collection of the late Jack Cohan, who was the first executive director at the Peace Center, and a really great guy and a mentor and a friend to me. I'm really, really pleased and honored to have them part of our presentation and part of our collection here that people can find and find a new home for. Moving down the line here, this is a radio show that Horizon sort of invented and used to sponsor, and I would be a co-host with, or host, at what was Rock 101. I think they might have been, does it say Rock 101? Yeah, they were WCKN back at the day, and they were based out of Anderson before they took on their Greenville presence. And it was a radio show called Eargasm. And it says, yes, you too can have an eargasm. Here's how. And this is another Jim Campbell piece of artwork that I think is just really great.
Yeah, that's also really good.
Be sure everything is plugged in. Get those tweeters tweeting and woofers woofing. And then every Sunday, tune in here. And then open your head and listen. It's got two headphones with tongues coming out of the head. Like, wow, okay. Anyway, that's a Jim Campbell piece, and I love it. Here is a little newspaper ad that we framed and hung up. The city of Greenville and Horizon Productions collaborated on a series of summer concerts back in the day behind the Peace Center before it got all built. The amphitheater was there, but it was barely there. It was just a platform and a terrace of seats. And we put on stuff. Aquarium Rescue Unit with Colonel Bruce. That was the original one that had Jimmy Herring, Matt Mundy, O'Teal on bass, and Jeff Sipe, a.k.a. Apartment Q 258. Or was it 252? On drums. And it had Zydeco Band, had Sue Foley, the blues gal, and it had Tapered Heads, an incredible local band that Lynn Rochester, Roy Moon, Brad Carr, and I think Russ Marin and Jimmy the Crusher McNeely on drums. Tapered Heads played that with those guys. Here's one of my greatest gifts in the music business is getting to know Newgrass Revival and the legendary Sam Bush right here and John Cowan. And this was a club that's long forgotten. It was in a roadhouse down on South Augusta called the Old and New Music Hall. A friend of mine and his brother-in-law took over this just unbelievable, just old roadhouse is all you could call it, and began to put on music in there. And I talked him into letting me book the calendar for the most part. And I had just acquired a Newgrass Revivals, one of their first records, and loved it, and just called up the phone number on the back of the album. That's the way they would do it in the old days. Sometimes you just see the phone number right there, you know. And I booked them, and they came, and the rest is history.
That's awesome.
But yes, and John Cowan is now the bass player full time for the Doobie Brothers and has been for quite a while.
Oh,
So if you go see the Doobie Brothers, unless something's changed, we'll be seeing him singing and playing bass at the left of the stage. That's him. You have, I'm sure. When they came to Simpsonville and the Peace Center the last couple times, he was with them. We hung it on. It was fun.
that's awesome. So cool.
Sam is still everywhere, just everywhere, you know, festivals and sitting in with everybody. There's an old poster at Sam Reynolds, a dear friend and a brilliant songwriter, guitar player, keyboardist, studio wizard. Was in a band called Bosco B with some other guys that are from Greenville. And he donated this poster from 1972 to our effort here. And it's really cool. Bosco B was a progressive rock band at Greenville, one of the more progressive things in Greenville. They didn't get to play out as often as we'd like because they were just just wasn't a cover band for the hotels and the you know honky tonks, but they were just brilliant. And they still play occasionally. I think they've picked up a new bass player, and some of the originals are still out there. This is a band called Fresh Licks. This is a Jim Campbell frame job where he built a frame out of replica materials from a vintage Fender Twin Reverb guitar amp. So that's what that curve and that tan and material that frames it is an old reverb, twin reverb amp. And this was a rock and roll band. This is Ricky Godfrey, brilliant musician, guitar player, and he's still touring. He's still gigging around Greenville. And that's Marvin King right there at a very young age, who's of course still playing, and is the proud father of Marcus King, who is everywhere these days. They both were on Off the City Limits recently, both live, streamed, and I think it may have broadcast earlier this month. And Marvin went down there and sat in with Marcus on National Public TV. I try and mix up the genres and the eras so that everybody's represented, you know, because it's easy for me to get just focused on this or that. This is rock and roll on the new mown lawn, and this is a production basically of the type of bands that Steve McGowan, who is nicknamed as the Zub Master, and his record label was Zub Records and Zub Productions. And these are some sort of garage and new wave bands. Beef People, who was Steve's band. Pop Mechanics, which was a brilliant, brilliant garage rock band that toured up and down the East Coast, and a couple of my dear friends were part of. And Slave Dick, which was a crazy band that Brad Carr and Bill Earl and some others promulgated on the innocent local public. And this was on the Heritage Green area, which is right there where the museum, you know, see Heritage Green in front of the Greenville County Museum of Art. And this goes back to the Uncle Waltz. Here they are at the Kerrville Folk Festival playing. And then they morphed into electric sort of rock and roll band version of themselves. David Ball went off on his own projects, and they picked up Jimbo Walsh on drums, Steve Runkle on electric bass, and Tommy Goldsmith on guitar, vocals, and wrote songs and stuff. And they were just unbelievably good. Tommy Goldsmith is still around. He's a deep journalist. He wrote a really amazing biography of Earl Scruggs and did book tours on it. In fact, came to the Sigil and did his presentation and did the signing and stuff. And anyway, I love the Contenders. They were really great. I saw them a bunch of times. That's my certificate of occupancy from the first store. For many years, I didn't have that, right at my fingertips. It was buried in some files, and people say, "When did you open?" I go, "I don't know, somewhere around Thanksgiving, early December in '75." But I found that, and now I know it was December 1st because it's got the document right here. And yeah, I paid my $10, and they came and inspected it, and we were open. And I always tell people my favorite thing, it says time and date of inspection, and then typed in it says lights are on. I'm like, okay, that must have been true. And then this last piece is really special. I use that word very carefully and very selectively. But this is a tribute to a guy whose collection we were so honored and privileged to take in. Let's see, this January must be, I think it's 2 years ago. He lived up in Pickens, but he was shopping for records in Greenville and all over the South. And he was one of these guys that if I bought a record, I kept it. And he had 50, 60,000 records. And there was a personal record collection in this one room, and then there was another in the garage was a whole batch of overflow duplicates, stuff he didn't really love, but he was going to put on the internet, And he passed away, sadly. And I knew him pretty well from the store, and his wife was mutual friends with some of my old friends, and we got the opportunity. We acquired it all. And that's what this is down through these wood crates here. And then all those boxes and then the stack of boxes in the back room. That's just his classical collection. Other parts of his collection are up on the very shelves and have been put into the store. And we got this article here from his wife. And I love it because he was such a character. And he lived at the time in Savannah when this article was done. And I'm going to read you this quote here in a second. But he loved collecting classical and also, but he loved all kinds of music. He would buy indie rock, jazz, blues, Latin, world music, electronic, avant-garde craziness, all sorts of things. But they did this article about him as a collector. It says, album collector goes on the record about music. All about Jim and his collection. He's standing there in front of a typical picture of his collection of thousands of records. And he says, and I just love this, quote, "Why should I go to hear the Savannah Symphony perform Beethoven's Fifth when I can hear it at home performed by Leonard Bernstein in the New York Philharmonic?" Now you got to know that in Savannah, when that went as a pull-out headline, that probably didn't sit real well with the guys and the ladies that put on the Savannah Symphony. Like, damn, thanks. This guy's a blankety blank. But that was classic Jim Robinson, and we loved him for it. And yeah, his collection is just amazing, and we're still unearthing it. Even as we speak. And that was 2 years ago.
Yeah, that is a treasure right there.
There's other stuff around, but that's kind of the main walk through the
Yeah.
front area so far. There's more coming, and we're still digging out stuff.